All right, guys, we're looking at this glitter tumbler. I'm gonna try to get you in focus so everybody can see. This is one of the ones from episode 1 from last night when we did our original glitter on Chunky. This is all Makerflo glitter that was actually done with the epoxy method, so it's pretty smooth. But because it's going to be peekaboo method and we're going to do decals especially, you want to make sure it's as smooth as possible. I've made the mistake of trying to apply decals when it's not smooth, and that makes you really, really, really sad. So a couple people asked about which sanding method is the best and is the easiest, and I'll use this sink on this side. Sometimes I do sand indoors, and when I do what's called wet sanding. So you're gonna just lightly wet your tumbler. I'm gonna use that same 3M sanding block. They come in packs of 3 and packs of 6. You can find them on Amazon. Make sure your cup is completely dry is a big thing. And you're gonna go all around your tumbler and filling it with your hand. I normally use a gloved hand. I don't touch a prep tumbler with my bare hand once I've started. But I've noticed with peekaboos, it doesn't make as much difference with my epoxy because I'm going to cover this with a layer of spray paint. So I have sanded before I spray painted before. I know that some people says it will give you small lines if you sand too hard, and those micro gashes are going to show up in your epoxy. And I haven't experienced that part yet, but I will say if you don't take the time to make sure it's completely smooth, those craters and holes are going to show up in that final coat that you then spray paint over. So this is actually a second attempt at this cup. It's one of those where you start. I got pretty far the first time, and I believe this is like a 400 grit. You can do a 200, 600. I've seen some people go to 800. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. You'll learn really quickly whether you're a little bit more heavy-handed than some on the sanding part. It doesn't take you long. If you start to notice that your glitter has gone from giving off a color to just being silver, then you're heavy-handed. So you're gonna wanna go for a lighter grit. This is a medium grit at 400, and that's gonna help you as well. What the water does is keeps the particles from floating everywhere. So if you're stuck indoors, like today, I think it's like 18 degrees outside. Even though we're in Texas, we're having a true winter moment. So we're gonna have a lot of indoor time today. And this allows me to keep this project moving and keep all of my turners going instead of having to wait until things cleared up to decide to go back outside. And what I'm doing right now is just feeling for any rough spot that I know I wanna go back and smooth. And I'm going to show you what I do when I add a thin coat of epoxy, because the rest of these were actually epoxy on last night. And while I'm doing that, I'll also show you the steps in between. When I was first starting out, the one thing I could not find really quickly was the entire pre-prep video. A lot of people kind of skip these steps. And you're not going to hear very much scrubbing. When people complain about the rims not being smooth, this is a good time to go around the rim with your finger and feel if you feel any spots that are rough. And if they're rough at this point, go ahead and sand them, because this cup, honestly, from now to the end, is probably going to receive a total of 2 more good coats, and it's going to be done. So you got to keep in mind where you are in the cup process. Like here, I can feel there's a spot that has not been touched, and as I go through, I'm going to realize that there's a little crater that's in that area. So as I epoxy, I want to pay attention to that area as well. All right, now I'm going to use a little Dawn dish soap just because of where we are in the process. I don't want anything left behind. As I said again, you normally would wear a glove with this process. But I've noticed once you're very much so into the stages where you put a coat or two, Art and Glow I know is a little bit more forgiving for me. My hands tend not to be oily because I don't wear scented lotions very often. But if you are a constantly hydrating kind of person, especially with your hands. You're gonna want to be really, really mindful of that portion. It doesn't necessarily have to be done dish soap. A lot of people say done just because we use it with the soap method, and it comes with the power wash as well. So let's go back and I'll show you the second coat of epoxy. And you have to excuse the wobbliness. We're gonna go from my kitchen to my work area. And that transition is gonna be a little rough, but I'll be able to show you exactly what's gonna happen in between. Now, PPE is going to be used, and this will give me a chance to kind of show you guys what I normally use. This is my workstation area. So let me get you set up there. I have to excuse the camera angles. This is my first time, I guess, trying to go from one room to the next. Now I'm trying to get this to clamp back. This is like a full-time job. So, let me get you screwed in. I'm hoping this is getting smaller and tighter. So I think it is. And y'all are just swirling in the wind up there. There we go. All right. Should be looking at my workstation. I'll go over PPE because I have a second to get that done and kind of show you guys what I use overall. You're gonna hear people talk about nitrile gloves is another one that comes up pretty often. And I still do a little ventilation. The type of glove you use is gonna be tied directly to your allergies, your preferences. I'm gonna need a few of these as well. So, depending on what you like to work with, depending on what you like the best, is gonna be what really works best for you. So, I'm gonna go ahead and glove up first. And I kind of showed you guys this part. I use nitrile gloves. I find that they work a little bit better. These are just some thinner ones that I already had on hand from other projects for epoxy. I did rolling trays, TV trays, a little bit of everything. And so these work really well. I have the thicker ones, but I buy them in packs of either 100 or 200. You're gonna go through a lot of gloves. If nothing else, I will tell you now, you're going to go through gloves. Gloves and small measuring cups are probably the top of the list of things that I go through the most. Some people will use the thicker silicone gloves. I have to have it thin enough where I can actually feel my epoxy. So you do a lot of things by touch and by feel. And it's kind of hard to get a sense. Now, you're talking about PPE. This is the mask that I currently use. It has a double filter sides and your valve intake for my respirator. It is double strapped in the back, and this is your GVS brand. Got it off of Amazon, so if you're looking brand-wise. This one works really well. It's gonna filter your air. It does a really good job as far as epoxy. I'm in a ventilated room, so I do have my ceiling fan going. I have my window cracked as well. But if I'm gonna epoxy, especially more than 1 cup, I'm gonna use this. No, you cannot have my ice cream. No, my child's at the window trying to steal ice cream from me, guys, at like 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't know, it's breakfast time, but I'm gonna get this video in before I cook breakfast. So normally I would wear this one. You'll notice during videos, I usually will only have like 1, maybe 2 cups going so that I can hear, you can hear me and the otherwise. And I will sometimes put on my regular breathing mask and surgical mask just so you guys can hear me. But this is my normal PPE. If you are spray painting outside, if I'm dry sanding, I will go outside. You don't want that dust in your home. It collects in your vents, y'all. And depending on how many tumblers you start doing, that dust adds up really, really quickly. If for any reason you notice your hands start to dry, you may have to go to a powder-free glove. So I've seen that as well. People thought they were reacting to epoxy, and it wasn't the epoxy, it's actually the dust that was coming off of their sanding from powder coats. Again, I'm using Wagner. I picked my little heat gun up. This one has been awesome. I believe these were like $19.99. Sometimes on Christmas, you can find them as low as $9.99. They are amazing. Heat guns are great for removing those bubbles. You can also use a torch as well if you prefer a torch. So either one, but you want to keep that one handy. And what I'm going to do is get this one turning because this coat is not going to take as long to dry. It's probably going to dry, honestly, within the next 4 to 6 hours. It'll be ready. So when I'm ready to come back in and add a second coat to my blue as well, then I'll be ready with this one too. And I thought about waiting, but I'll go ahead and do this one so you guys can actually see this one done as well. Now, medicine cups. You're gonna see all types of cups for epoxy. They make these in silicone. You can buy these in Amazon. I think I bought like 400 of these for maybe $6 from Amazon as your friend. I know Dollar Tree carries these as well. So that's a really big one. But I use on average about 3 of these per coat. What I've learned is if I'm doing a smaller batch, I want to line these up as perfectly as possible. You're going to notice that I will mix them in the same cup, and then I'm going to pour them in the third cup. What I will not do is I'm going from the mixture here to pouring into my third and final cup from which I'll cover the project with. I will not scrape the sides. So the sides and the bottom are going to be a big one. And it's only because sometimes you're going to have epoxy there that has not mixed properly, and you don't want to include that. Last but not least, before I get this back on the turner, and this is what will be our future KDA peekaboo, I'm going to alcohol. And people do this stuff pretty early. I do it after a couple of minutes. I just want to make sure, number one, all of the sanding goop is off. Number two, I can still get a feel for my cup and figure out what parts, like I can tell now I'm going to really focus on smoothing my bottom because this is going to be the final coat of smoothing before I'm ready to spray paint. And I want to make sure there are no dents, no indentions, no nothing. So I want to have enough epoxy that is taken care of. I always alcohol just before I put it back on my turner. This is a cup turner from Amazon. Came as a kit, roughly about $30, and they come with 2 silicone mats, a drying rack. It's a really nice kit. It's anywhere from $24 to $29. So if you just type in cup turner, it will pop up. And this one actually has a screw with the little black lug nut piece. So you can easily snap on, snap off, and be done. I know sometimes when people are making their own turners, they kind of forget they want to be able to detach the cup. And detaching the cup and being able to get that part done is really important. Don't forget to put down your silicone mats. You want to protect your work area, whatever that may be. So I try to keep my work surface, though it looks really rough sometimes. Like this mat, for example, what I'm going to do is just let this dry, and I will come back and very satisfyingly pull this off little by little. So that'll be our next move. And this is actually the epoxy mat from last night. So I've got this little cup that it has nicely congealed. It's not quite ready, so I'm gonna let that stick to that one, and we'll just use the smaller mats today. Just wanna make sure you have something in place to catch any epoxy that may fall. And then make sure you position your cup. Now you will notice sometimes if your cup gets off, it's gonna wobble. And there are some times when you'll notice a slow little wobble. You wanna make sure your top line is staying as straight all the way around as possible. And for me, I also turn, of course, my cup away from me. That's gonna be a preference that you will figure out which way you like to work. So let's go ahead and get ready to epoxy. Remember, Art and Glow, if that's what you're working with or thinking about. If you're purchasing epoxy from Michael's, from Hobby Lobby, All of those are gonna be 2-part epoxies. Do not get the casting resin. That's completely different. It's for molds. It's gonna dry completely white. And I've seen some people make that mistake before. I'm gonna go in, and because this coat, I wanna make sure it's a good thick one. In the end, we're gonna use, let's see, probably, let's go with 10. I think 10 is enough. So 5 of each part. I use the snow cone dispensers. They make my life a whole lot easier. Let's just being honest. I saw on, I think I was watching Glitter Champ, and she uses the snow cone dispensers as well. And it's one of those, when you get used to the pumps and you can tell exactly how much is where, it is awesome. When in doubt, I go to a little bit more hardener than resin. And so if you ever think your cups are pretty even, but you're not quite sure, I would go with that. So this is my part A, this is my part B. And what I'm gonna do, I will slide this out of your view for just a second. On this part A and part B, you're gonna notice that one is a lot thicker than your other one. Your hardener is actually really runny. And sometimes your epoxy is going to discolor. It will yellow. If you've kept it in the garage, anywhere where the temperature is gonna fluctuate, it will yellow. Honestly, my Ardent Glow was kept in the garage, and I'm in Texas. We get up to 102, 104 in the Dallas area through the summer. It still works. It's gonna dry clear, it's gonna bubble, but you're gonna notice that it will not look very clear in the cup. I'm gonna take my thicker portion and we're gonna scoop that into the cup that contains the thinner portion. Now you may wonder, why are we doing the thicker side to the thinner side? It is harder to get to the bottom of the cup and scrape out everything from your thicker side, which is my resin, than it is for me to do it with the hardener. The hardener will easily flow in. But what ends up happening is you end up with these pockets that are not mixed, and that's what you do not want. You want to make sure all of your pockets are going to be well mixed, and you want to make sure that you're giving it about 3 minutes. You're going to be able to tell when your particular type of epoxy is ready to go. So this is my cup that contained my resin. We're going to go ahead and throw that away. I'm going to start the mixing process. I don't have a rate for mixing epoxy, so I'm not the slowest mixer in the world. I'm not probably the quickest mixer. All I know, honestly, if you look, it's going to be pretty cloudy right now. We're going to keep stirring. And I twist my cup a little bit. I make sure to just scrape my bottom and my sides. And it's actually going to clear up within the cup compared to where it started and that reaction started really quickly. So I can tell right now even that it's a lot clearer. If you look here, it's getting clear. Look toward the bottom. So even if your epoxy is a little bit older, don't be quick to just toss it away because it was yellowing. It's going to make things yellow. It's normally the paint or the glitter that will yellow before anything. And there are a couple of tips and tricks I've heard and used to help keep your white areas of your tumbler white longer. So, and I will share those as we go through different videos as well. But for some reason during the winter time, everything with glitter becomes really, really poppy. So, scrape your sides. Make sure you're getting all that you can. Because when we pour from one cup to our final cup, we are not going to scrape our sides or our bottom at all. So you are going in a circle, and then I turn, and then I'm going to scrape the sides. Now, a few people will have a reaction. Remember that the part A and part B are to make sure the chemical reaction for your epoxy do not take place before you're ready. If you ever have a cup and you start to notice that your cup is heating up, or your cup is beginning to smoke to the point that you cannot hold it, it means that that reaction is an exothermic reaction. It's giving off heat. And what's probably happened is you have over mixed a portion. Normally you have more resin than your hardener, and your reaction is going way too quick. I have seen it melt the cup. I have seen it catch fire. I've seen it do a couple of things. So you have to be really, really mindful and careful about that one. So we've been doing this for a couple of minutes. I think we're ready. If you pick up your spoon if you're using a spatula, a wooden stick, and it looks clear coming off, you're gonna notice that there are some bubbles in there. I'm gonna tell you now, those bubbles that are rising to the top of your epoxy, do not let those bother you. They can stay there, they can be there, guys. They're gonna be fine. But we're gonna take care of those with our heat gun at the end, and they will not be a problem for you. So don't let the bubbles bother you. Don't restart. I've seen some people will heat the cups, when some people, you know, it's all kind of ways to deal with it, but honestly, the bubbles don't matter. So they don't matter, and I don't worry about them at all. So now, last but not least, you're going to, I should have did this before, take that third cup, take the cup that has your mixed epoxy that we just let rest for a couple of seconds to the side, and let all those big bubbles come to the top and do their thing. And we are simply going to pour from the mixing cup to our third cup. And notice that I am not scraping the sides. Anything that's left along the side, we're gonna leave it in the cup. And I have noticed that by doing that, at first it felt pretty wasteful, but now I figured out it allows me to stay away from epoxy that hasn't mixed properly. So let's do the, I guess the flood coat method is what I'm used to doing pretty often, because I hit the cup pretty heavily in a area, and then I'll allow my layers to kind of mix over with one another. And you're gonna notice your shine is gonna come right on back. A lot of people get nervous with sanding. I'm scared I'm gonna scrape my glitter. But remember, that's why we did the 2 layers of epoxy before we sanded the first time. Your glitter is covered, it's protected. Right now, we're just trying to make sure we have a smooth, pretty coat that we're able to use so that we can spray paint exactly like we want to. So we wanna make sure our client is gonna be able to get a cup that is smooth, that is decaled properly, and our peekaboo comes out really nice. If your cup is not smooth, your glitter will not bind. I have done a peekaboo before, y'all. I could not, for the life of me, get my vinyl to stick. I have a kid going back and forth outside. We're in Texas. Now it's like 18 degrees outside. My child is walking as if he's gonna really stay outside in a hoodie and some pajamas, but I'm gonna let him live his best life. Yes, baby.
The whole ground is frozen.
It's frozen. It's good and frozen outside.
It's like permafrost.
Oh my. Okay, I have to get that off my phone. Got a little working time. Gotta get the epoxy off my screen. So let's work quickly. I've got to go to all my areas that I see are grayed. You want to make sure you get the entire cup. You want this cup to be baby bottom soft at this point. It needs to be smooth. And what I'm going for, honestly, is a layer that is almost as thin as the layer when you're applying glitter. So you want to treat this as if you're only putting about 2 or 3 milliliters on it, even though we did 10, because this is, number one, is a 30-ounce cup. But number two, remember our biggest focus was around this bottom edge. We needed the bottom edge to smooth out. We needed this bottom edge to really fill in. And that's where our craters have been giving us a little bit of grief right there. So we could smooth it a little bit better. You can come back and sand before you epoxy. I have sanded a cup, spray painted, did the peekaboo, and sanded again, to be honest, because I had a chunky area that did not lay down under the paint, and I knew I could take it away with a little acetone. So I added that effect, and that allowed me to get that done as well. So if you take a look, our entire cup should feel and look pretty good. I'm gonna give it a second and look for light patches. This bottom, y'all, is gonna be the death of me. I am a rim person, and with chunky glitter, you're gonna pay a lot of attention, especially to your bottom rim. Some people don't chunky on the bottom. I prefer a cup that has been fully attended to. I want my cup to be fully glittered. It's just one of my preferences. Most of my clients probably could care less about the bottom of their cup. But this should produce a smooth enough coating that we're able to decal. And that's the point that we're trying to get to. Don't forget, when you remove these gloves, you're gonna have powder on your hands. So sometimes if you know you're about to touch something else, I will alcohol the hand just to kind of remove some of that powder. And then of course, before I allow us to spin, because this one should be on its last coat, I'll be able to check my other two. I know my blue one has one more coat to go. And then everybody's gonna kind of be in the same place. And once I get a group of cups to a pretty solid place, that's when I normally try to start decaling on some of those. Because decals can be pretty interesting. And if I'm going to peekaboo, I don't want to have to go outside over and over again. Just enough times to get everything done. Remember, with your heat gun, let it warm up just a second. You're going to stay about 6 to 8 inches away from whatever product you're working on. You don't want to scorch your epoxy. And for me, this is probably going to turn, these guys are probably going to turn to about 6 o'clock tonight. So they're going to get about 9, probably a total of, from the ones we did last night, about 15 hours for the first 3. This one will have about 9 hours since that coat was pretty thin. So I will regulate this room and bring the temp up to about 72, 73, and we should be good to go. I will bring you guys back once I have spray painted. I will probably show you, or I can show you, the application of decals, but I'm pretty sure we're familiar. Or I will decal one, spray paint it, and then we'll actively decal the other one, and I'll show you how to remove that one for the peekaboo effect. I will see you guys soon. Be sure to follow the hashtag A Crafter's Journey so that you know when I'm going to post and how often. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and enjoy your Valentine's Day.